Okay, welcome back. I've already downloaded the files that we'll be playing with, and remember that everything that we cover is going to be on Notes 4. This is just some practice that what we can deal with in terms of utilizing some of the tools. So I'm going to open up Photoshop, and one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to go File, Open, and I'm going to open multiple files because I feel like I'm going to be patriotic today. So I'm going to hold down a Control key and click on the flag.jpg and then the apple-logo.jpg and click on Open. So what I've got now is I've got two different files, and what I'm going to do before I get too far along is I'm going to take this flag and I'm going to drag it up over to the apple, and then I'm going to drop it down here, and I'm going to position it. So just click and drag it up there. Now for the time being, I don't want to see this and I don't want to play with it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the view, visibility, show, hide. I like to call it the evil eye because it makes things disappear. I'm still on the layer here, and that's one of the things that I always mess up. I'm thinking I'm down here playing with it when I'm actually on this layer, so that's one of the things you have to be careful of. And layer one's not very descriptive, so I'm going to call flag. That's one of the things you should get in the habit of doing, and I want you to do for all the assignments, is name your layers, because when you start working around with stuff, it can get quite confusing as what you're working with. And this other layer I'm just going to call apple, or I can just leave it as background. Now when I name it, notice how that padlock goes away, so it's easy to erase. Now this is going to be one of my quick tricks that I like to do, is I'm going to play around with the eraser tool. And if I was to use that eraser tool, I could just click on that right there, and it's kind of slow, kind of tedious. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the magic eraser tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this white area, and it gets rid of all of the white. Now you might think that you want to use the background color eraser tool, but you got to be careful with that one because sometimes it deletes white where it's not really the background or whatever color the background is. So there, I've got that set up. Now I'm going to jump back here, and I have my flag and then I have my apple. I would really like to see that flag mapped over that apple. So what I'm going to do is I am going to right click on flag, and I'm going to select create clipping mask. And what it does is it puts that flag over everything in this layer. So if I had a background there, it would just be the whole thing. But since only having an apple, this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to want to make this look a little distinctive because it looks kind of flat still, kind of cool. But what I'm going to do before I play around with it too much is I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to move my stars and stripe around a little teeny bit so I can get maybe a little bit more of the stars. There we go. And if you notice up here I've got some blank space. Well, that doesn't matter because I've got it right here. Now I'm going to jump back to here, and I want to make this pop out a little teeny bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some layer effects. See, it says FX there, so I'm going to add a layer style. Well, remember last week we created some of our own styles. Well, I'm going to do this again. One of the first things I'm going to do is I want to give it some depth, so I'm going to do a bevel and emboss. Now this one's also a little bit tricky because I don't like how they handle some of the manipulations of it, but look at the bevel and emboss. It gives you a little bit more texture to it. I am going to give it some contour too, so it kind of has like a shape to some of the shading for that. Now what's happened to me on several occasions, I click on, oh, I want a drop shadow here, but I want to change that drop shadow settings. It doesn't change until I click on here, which by the way, since I'm back here on contour, I can change how I have this bevel or the smoothing. So it's just the ability to tweak what we've just done. Well, adding a drop shadow became kind of cool because it gives you more three-dimensional look to it. And then you can play with some other things, like I don't want a gradient overlays. If I wanted to get rid of that, I can just go or do it more. No. Well, what I can do is either do a Control Z, don't want that. I can hit the trash can here, trash can here, trash can here, trash can there, and there we go. So that's how you do a clipping mask, and it gives you all sorts of capabilities. Now the other thing I could do is satin or inner shadows. I don't think an inner shadow would do much for me. Maybe a little bit. Outer glow. Nah, I really can't tell much on that. I could change the color of it to maybe give me some more, but for the most part I'm pretty happy with the way that is. So I click on OK. I'm done with it. I have now created a clipping mask with my flag over the apple. And so all I have to do now is go File, Save. I'm going to save it as flag apple.psd. And once again, we remember we always save everything as a PSD so we can come back and change it. Let's say I save this out as a JPEG and later on somebody says, you know, we want to make fun of what's going on, you know, Apple's doing some stuff in China, so why don't you change it from an American flag to a Chinese flag? Well, you could easily do that. Or if you don't like the bevel emboss or some of the other things, you can do that. Now, something I should point out is even though I've put those in, I can actually turn them off one at a time to see how it looks. Outer glow. I noticed a little bit there, so I'm going to leave that outer glow. Bevel emboss, ooh, definitely can tell a difference in that. And once again, it's just literally lighting and the way it handles some of the shading that gives you that dimensional feel. So I've already saved it as a PSD, so now I'm going to export it out as a JPEG. Now, one of the things you should always notice about JPEGs is even though I didn't have a background, if I export it out as a JPEG, it's going to put a background for me. And I'm going to look at some of this. Well, notice some of this jaggedness. That's from when I used that magic eraser. That's one of the drawbacks of using that. Let's see if we can get a little bit smoother. If I would have used the selection tools and then masked it out, I could probably get rid of some of that and I could actually do some of the smoothing. So that's the trade-off that you have to make when you are doing something like that. So I'm very happy with it. Notice once again I am still under that magic mark of 100K, so I can be happy. Just hit save and we're done. Now the next thing we want to do is I'm going to go open. Now last week we played around with Brad Pitt, so I'm going to grab Angelina Jolie. This is from our Tomb Raider movie. It's one of the series. And actually I thought she was a much better Tomb Raider than the new gal. But then again, that might just have been the writing. Now if I was to go back and use this magic eraser tool, it might do a pretty good job here, but watch what happens when I do it there. Part of her face goes away. So we don't want to do that, so I'm going to do a Control-Alt-Z to get that back and a Control-Alt-Z to get this back. Now if I was really doing this in the real life and I didn't want this in here, I would crop it out first. I would just click on the cropping tool. I would come over here and click and drag it down to something like that and then double click. Now where we're going to have some fun is right around here, right around here, and right around here. But for the most part, also, you know, I wish the picture would have been a little bit higher up because, you know, her hair got cut off. So one of the tricks that I would use is I would use the clone stamp to put that back in. Well, I'm not going to waste your time with that today, but I am going to do my quick select with my mask. The quick select tool right now, the brush is way too small, so I could either come over here once again and make it bigger, or I could use that close bracket to do it. And I always like to just drag it straight down first and then click on sides, and then I'm going to probably make this a little teeny bit smaller and click around her arms like that. Now you notice I missed a little bit on that, but I can live with that for now. Click right there, got that. I'm going to want to click and drag her arm right there. I've got a couple fingers that I cut off. Now the major part that I have missed right here is the face. Well, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and that way I can see it. Now I'm going to make my brush a little teeny bit smaller. Click there, click there, click a little bit there. Once again, now I'm getting close, but it's expanding it out just a teeny bit more, like that. Oops, I missed a whole thing of hair. I wouldn't have seen that if it wasn't for the fact that I had blown it up. Oops, still got a finger missing. And there we go. Oops, I got a little teeny bit here. This is going to be a tough one. Ooh, I got lucky. Just because it's so light, I might miss part of that right there. Now the other thing that I missed is her hair, so I'm going to have to make this brush much smaller. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to use our quick select tool to get her hair. Now this is going to be kind of tricky, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow it up even more, so with the control plus, and then I'm going to scroll down here a little teeny bit. Or if I would, I could have used the magnifying glass and it probably would have been a lot quicker. I'm going to use the plus, but this brush is way too big, so I'm going to make it smaller. And I'm just going to click right there, click right there. And now this is where it gets silly. I can do a control Z because oops, control alt Z, control alt Z. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go, maybe, didn't like that. I'm going to make it a little smaller than that. Nope, did it again. I don't know why it doesn't like that, but I am going to have to get rid of this little spot in here. So I'm going to do click, click, drag. And I'm back to where it was. Now I'm going to do control 1, or I can do control 0. Control 0 gives me the full screen, so I think I'm pretty happy with that. Now what you do is, next thing you do is you go select and mask.